4-star short here. I'm Annie Bishop, and I am delighted to be joined by the one and only Bettina Hoy. Bettina, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've had a busy weekend so far. You're here for the Bromont Rising program, which is such an incredible program, and every student I've talked to has had a wonderful experience, and it's great that you come back year after year to do this.
Yes, thank you very much. It's I always find it sometimes a bit tough on the kids, because I get sort of thrown in last minute, and some of them do their first international ones, and it's then not very easy to maybe adapt to a change. But I'm sure they get a lot out of it, even if it's just in hindsight. But Jessie is about to start with a lovely horse, Paris Olympic horse Freedom.
And this pair will be off to Aachen shortly.
Yeah, she told me, because I tried to get her some stables in the Aachen vicinity. At this level, you would expect the horse to go straight from canter into the hold, sit a little bit more and not throw some trot steps in. It's a nice fluent shoulder in. But you could see in the shoulder in already how the horse was tilting a bit, and that's now slightly highlighted in the half pass. There the judges will want to see that it is diagonal in the rein-back. It struggled a little bit to get into, but then it was a nice beat and a nice rhythm, correct rhythm to go into the rein back. It's a little bit better on this rein now, I find, with the shoulder in. And it's also more uphill in the half passes. It's a lovely type of a horse. I mean, that is definitely something when the judges look at a test, they take that overall picture in first and then obviously look at the movements and the correctness of the movements. Here the judges want to see that first part is medium walk. The judges want to see that when the rider allows with the rein, that the horse reaches with the nose. You can see that Jesse is doing it really tactfully and cleverly, but the horse with that length of rein given to him, although it's over tracking, it should stretch a little bit more over the neck and over the back. But it was a nice rhythm maintained. Good strike off. Now we have that first difficulty in this test, which is that flying change off the square turn over the center line. Whoops. It's a bit against the hand, but it was a clean change. And then immediately at the half point into the half pass, the judges want to see that the horse is collected, is jumping under, still uphill as well in the correct flexion. Extended canter. In this test we only have one extension in the canter, and there's an extra mark for the transition at the end. So you, as a rider, you have to make sure that you ride a proper finish to your extended canter. That change was late. She tried to ride it clever by riding a slight S-bend, so obviously this change is a little bit more difficult for the horse. So she rode a very clever line, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out. Now we have the transition to trot, and then the one extended trot that we have in this test. That's a nice trot. And again, there is an extra mark for that transition as well at the end. So what did the prediction center say about the average score?
Well, I think, Jess's average score is around, I think around a 30%.
70%.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. But she is the predicted winner. The final, when we get to the end of the weekend, the prediction center will be updated after dressage today to see if any spanners were thrown in the works. But based on what we know about the venue, how hard the time is to make here, all of the factors, this is the favorite for the weekend.
All right. See, there you can see now, because we were asked that question this morning, when do the horses show their best walk?
When they're leaving.
When they're leaving the arena. Because, so almost as a rider, you have to think, when you're riding that transition into the walk, I'm done, Take a breath out, take your nose forward, you're fine. And that is something you can teach the horse. You can do it a little bit, practice in the beginning, you practice in the middle, and you practice at the end of your work session. I encourage my students to do a fair bit of that, because as you go up the levels, you realize how many marks you can lose or win just by the walk.
We've seen many 5-star tests go down very quickly because the walk is not where it needs to be to keep the marks up.
Yeah. And I mean, not every horse has a good walk, fair enough. But you should be able, with not asking for that level of collection, like a Grand Prix horse, you should be able to get a decent enough walk out of every horse, teaching them to relax when you want them to relax. And that's why the walk counts double, because it's basically the mark, is the horse supple over the back or not. So we have now a few movements, relatively new since, I can't remember whether it was this year or last year, that will count double, of which the walk is one, and also the flying changes. So having proper flying changes or not, gets very quickly very expensive.
Yes, and we saw that happen with Roz at badminton as well. It got very expensive for her. It's interesting. Sharon White was telling me that this winter with her lovely mare Jaguars Dundee that she spent a lot of time just walking.
Yeah.
Because the mare would struggle a bit in the test. And so she said, you know what, we're just going to make this the thing and we're going to walk everywhere and we're going to just make it a happy, easy place to be.
Yeah,
and I think that you can see that that's really come to fruition for Sharon so far this season.
Yeah.
Next, we will be welcoming into the ring Ashley Adams and Quicksilver Gräns. This is a Swedish warm blood gelding who is just 10 years old. And this pair were last in the 4-star at Tryon, where they were 6th place. And this pair comes from North Carolina.
It's a lovely type of an eventer. It's of the horse you can imagine going around badminton and Burley.
Yes.
As a type of a horse.
One thing I've been saying all weekend is in eventing, you know, we have all shapes and sizes of horses and riders. But there are certain types that you see that feel like they are meant. They have a certain stamp.
For a certain job, absolutely. I agree.
This morning, some of the greener horses were taking exception to a few of the things down at the end of the arena, the atmosphere. So I feel like hopefully these horses that are more experienced will settle in a bit.
Yeah, it can easily happen. I mean, sometimes you're better off having a stadium like this full of people than having the odd one walking around, because the horse will notice that. And then they start looking a little bit into space.
Yeah, some of the riders were commenting that having the tent up on the berm this year was actually helpful.
Was helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Because I saw a few horses yesterday staring into it. But, it might just work better for the horses having it a little bit closed in.
Well, as you say, instead of one lone person up on the berm, it gives it a little bit more space.
Oh, that's unfortunate, but very quickly happens. And it's usually a sign that the horse is a little tense and not quite enough in front of the aids. But well recovered and nice half pass to the left. Judges there also, they want to see, so a little bit rushed the rein back, they want to see that the rider is actually halting long enough. Like I tell my students, they have to count 22, 23, 24. That's slow, because then you have your 3 seconds immobility, which is what the judges would be looking for. And there as well, from that shoulder in, especially doing the shoulder in, which on both reins they do away from the judges. You almost want to flex a fraction more without pushing the horse onto the outside shoulder. Like, again, we really want to see a horse being in balance, which means the outside shoulder, as the word says, it's shoulder in, it's not ass out, I always say. And there's a very clear difference between that. The one movement has got a collective effect, and the other one, it's just pushing a little bit sideways. Yeah, the medium walk looked a little bit rushed and tense, but now he's certainly trying to stretch more into a forward contact. But the rider's riding it very diplomatically, just being careful to keep the horse supple in the walk and not losing the rhythm. Yeah, the horses, obviously, they all know the canter is starting at A. So in training, you want to do it well after A, so they don't anticipate too early. Whoops.
Oh, exuberant.
That was exuberant, exactly. So that would give a maximum of 4, I would say. And then the half pass is also a little bit trailing. Not quite parallel enough for this level. But it's all very easy to say, like, well, I'm sitting here with smart comments. But then when you're in there and having to do it, it's a totally different ball game. And I find that Ashley is actually riding very diplomatically and is trying to give a horse a good experience. Yeah, the horse is obviously quite nervous about the flying change. And sometimes it depends a little bit on the quality of the basic canter, whether they find it difficult or a little bit easier. The horse is just quite tight and tense now in itself. It's just, I'm sure it wants to do a good job and wants to be a good boy and doing it all right, but it's just a little bit, whether it's the atmosphere or general tension.
She did a very nice job sort of keeping that together.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can see in her face she's probably happy that it's over. And cross-country days tomorrow, which I'm sure is much more fun on Quicksilver Gräns.
Well, and we've been talking about it all weekend as we've been watching, every division, but really these 4-star horses are so fit, especially to tackle a course like Bromont. We've got so much terrain here.
Especially here, yeah, and they have to be. And then that is always a difficulty. You obviously want them, supple, relaxed, properly worked, but you don't want to tire them for tomorrow. And they need to be, as you quite rightly say, they need to be really, really fit for this kind of terrain, for this kind of cross-country. And there's always a question, I mean, the big key is always, how do you warm them up? How often do you warm them up? How long do you warm them up? How early do you get to a competition? And that is something that you have to work out for yourself and for the horse for over the years. What is the best program? I do find that, I mean, you have to go through the whole test often enough, because often we ride individual movements but don't put the whole thing together. And that is something that is definitely very, very important. But also, like my thing is always, you have to ride loads and loads and loads of transitions, of simple transitions, to make the horse stronger behind, to get them more power from behind, because you need that out on the cross country. But also to be able to change something in front, but what's behind you needs to keep going, because that's what you need in the test. And then the rest is really whatever the horse is capable of doing. Some horses can move bigger, other can move maybe not quite so big. But if you just staying at that same speed in your trot, in your canter, you never leave your comfort zone. But then in there, you have to ride a shoulder in. Then you want that little bit extra. Then you have to ride a medium trot. You have to ride an extended canter. If you don't practice that often enough, without the pressure of maybe being in an arena, how would the horse know how to respond without getting tense and tight?
Well, that, but also you may have a different horse in a change after you've been through most of the test versus just doing a change on its own, right? Like, I think every horse will react differently to sort of how tired they may get, or, just really, like, I think putting it together makes so much sense. And Sarah and I have been saying all weekend as well, like, ring time is what's important, and sort of actually getting into the competition and doing the full test. So whether that's going to a dressage schooling show or anything else.
I was about to say, it's basically doing it where you're not thinking about cross country and show jumping, where you just say, okay, now I'm having to work out how long do I need to warm up. I have to be in the boards, but with no pressure what's coming afterwards. Even having the possibility of riding a second or a third test on the day or the day after, so that you can fine-tune your preparation, because at the end it's all in the preparation. It's not just the preparation as in the actual warm-up, but also where and how do you prepare the next movement.
Next we have coming in Kimi CCI and OS Hermitage. And this pair were at the Defender Kentucky 3-day event in the 4-star there. They ended up just outside the top 20.
See, I always like, rather than cantering and cantering and cantering and cantering around, when they ring the bell, I try to, and have done with all my horses and encourage my students as well, to ride one transition from collected canter to collected walk early enough so you can maybe repeat it before you come down the center line, because you practice then your transition into that hold immediately before you're having to do it. Because when you sit with the judges, sometimes you have to nail the first two movements. If you nail them, they probably hate to hear that, but you are in a box. They put you in a box, in a draw, and you want to be in as highest draw as you possibly can, because there's bound to be a mistake somewhere.
Yes.
And then you want to have had some money in the bank before you before you make that mistake, so that it's not too costly. Not quite straight, but it was a diagonal rein back, so it was definitely nice enough. And Kimmy is trying to encourage the horse to stay uphill and stay supple. It's a little bit of a tilt there on that half 10-meter circle. And again, there you can see a little bit the quarters were leading us, at least from the angle of our camera. The quarters were leading a bit, where you would say, as a coach, I would say, just get that outside shoulder a little bit more over, so that the horse definitely stays parallel. Now there you can see there's a rider that is confident that the horse has got a good walk, and she is making the most out of that. You would like to see the horse a little softer from the wither for a really high score, because she is trying now. It's getting a little bit better towards the end, so horse is trying to come up occasionally, but it was definitely a nice over track. Good change. There's were a little bit similar to what I said about the half pass in the trot, but it was still from our camera angle. It was a nice half pass. Horse is obviously very established in the flying changes, because it's really effortless, so she should get, and bearing in mind they count double, she should get some good marks for those flying changes. And the transitions were good. Like, was definitely a nicely executed test. I would say she will go into the lead after this one.
Seems about right. And very accurate everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the changes and the rein back is always, and also the over track in the walk, is always a very good indication of correct training. And that was lovely to see. Like, if I was super critical as a coach, I would like to see the horse a little bit softer from the wither, but that is minor. That would just maybe add a little bit to the overall swing over the back. But that is criticizing, at a very high level, because there was definitely a lot to like in that test, and definitely, the level of training is very good. You have to really say that. That would be, as I said, that would be minor little things that I would work on. If I was
the
coach,
overall picture.
or for the overall picture, exactly.
We're just getting a few scores in now. Jessica Phoenix and Freedom GS will move forward to tomorrow on a 31.9. And we'll bring you a score for Ashley and Kimmy as soon as they're in.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, at the end, the judges are supposed to obviously judge with a scale of training in mind. So the first point on the scale of training is rhythm.
Yep.
So that is what they be looking for to start with. And you would say with Kimmy that the horse had a nice regular rhythm all the way through.
Because they didn't change.
Exactly, it didn't change. As I said, to be super critical, you want to see it maybe a little bit softer over the back. She could show a little bit more collection, but that is also a process. And if at this stage it would affect the rhythm, I would definitely settle for this, for starters, because the rest will come in time.
And the horse is just an 11-year-old, and
Yeah,
you feel like still
plenty
growing
of
up.
time, absolutely. And sometimes you don't want to ask for that too early. It's. I was telling actually some of these kids the other day. I had a horse that was bred to be a show jumper, so I would say slightly downhill. And when I started to be more coached than an event rider, I turned him into a dressage horse, and he competed successful at Priest and George level. But up until the very end that I had him, he struggled to stay in a proper uphill balance in an 8-meter circle and trot. Now I have a purpose-bred dressage horse, and when he was 4, he had absolutely no problems doing that.
Right.
So if you think about what kind of horses do we get in our sport, certainly not dressage horses.
No.
Usually not dressage horses. Some have dressage bred or have some dressage blood in them. But most of them would be, here obviously a lot more thoroughbreds than what we have in Europe, but also a lot of show jumpers. So you need to give them time to develop the right muscles, because if you do it too quick, you either break them physically or you break them mentally, because they give you everything out there on the cross country and even in here.
Yes.
And you have to give them the signal you're doing well. You're doing a good job.
It's that balance with wanting to push for
100%
more,
sure.
but knowing what you can
Exactly.
actually ask for.
Exactly.
We will welcome into the ring now Tracy Bieneman and Venezuelan River. This pair were last at Fair Hill in the Advanced, where they actually took home the win.
I was about to say it looks like a thoroughbred,
It
but
is,
it is
yes.
a thoroughbred, yeah.
9-year-old thoroughbred gelding. Seen quite a lot of thoroughbreds here this weekend, which I think people know that when you come to Bromont, you want some blood.
Yeah, you do want to have something that can gallop with ease up these little hills, for sure.
They may not feel so little tomorrow.
No, they won't, I'm sure. But this is a lovely type. It's a lovely horse. And for a thoroughbred, it actually has got a really nice swing to its trot as well. Usually the walk and canter is good, but you have to find someone that is also able to... Oh, that was unfortunate. She moved it out a little bit to correct the hold, and it actually got worse. That's another movement where you almost have to take a little bit of a breath before you go in, and certainly be careful with your seat that you're not pressing your seat bones down. I see a lot of riders sort of tipping backwards and press the seat bones down, and with a thoroughbred they are even less likely to do it when
Yes.
you put pressure on their back. This side is definitely a little bit more difficult for the horse. The quarters try to come in a bit in the shoulder in, but also a little bit in the half pass. But it is a lovely type. It's a really nice type of a horse. It's definitely a nice medium walk. Now she's obviously careful of going more forward with her hands and let that nose more reach. And she will know why she is doing that. But in the ideal world, the judges don't want to see the nose below the chest, so they have to really go soft from the wither and out with the nose, like reach to what the rider is offering.
Not
with the
just
hands.
straight down.
Exactly. And there, again, in the ideal world, you would like to show some collected steps, but a lot of horses are better. Yeah, the potentially a good change was there, just had a little, not quite sure when, moment, just the stride before the change, but then when the change happened, it was clean. Yeah, so with some horses, you just have to be a bit conservative in that strike off into canter and only shorten the reins and collect. But there you can see, there was a thoroughbred. That was a lovely extended canter. Beautiful.
Well, and every rider will know where there's the moment in the test where they will maybe sacrifice a slight
For sure.
accuracy to make sure that they get the movement done correctly.
That was shame. She just gave a little bit, let go of the legs, so the horse was actually not only one late, it was unfortunately too late behind. But look at that one, it can properly trot.
Wow.
Like for a thoroughbred, fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just getting these horses also to feel comfortable enough to sit and collect without getting, all tense and tight. And again, like what we said before, that is a process and it takes a little bit of time. So if the horse is able to sit a bit more, because it's got the idea of doing a nice flying change, it just needs to accept and doing it very quietly to do it really on the aids. But what's nice is, although he made the mistake, it didn't upset him. Like the grey got a little bit upset in the flying change.
Yes.
Like he hasn't quite worked out how to do it. But I'm sure she's also had some lovely changes at home and even in the warm-up. So it was just one of those moments in the test when it comes quite quickly.
And he's not stressed about it.
And he's not stressed
nice.
about it, which is always nice, because that's far easier to work with than what Ashley had with her grey. That's definitely, harder to fix.
It's so interesting, the things that horses internalize.
For sure, yeah.
It's always just sort of finding that balance.
But it's also a bit how you've been taught in the first place. I mean, obviously the big difference between 3-star and 4-star is the flying change.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think we make far too much of a big thing out of it. I mean, if you look at pure dressage, is already at a relatively low level.
Yes.
Where horses do, at 6 years of age, they're taught to do flying changes. So at the end of 5, you start riding flying changes.
Yeah.
And they know big deal. Whereas we often wait a fair bit, although they obviously, most of them change in the arena for show jumping, which they have to, and also out on the cross country. But then when it's on the age, with the pressure of doing it between the white boards, for some reason it becomes a different ball game.
Probably more for the rider than anyone else.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
Have you had a chance to walk around the cross-country courses?
I did, but only the 2 and 3
Yeah.
star. I haven't. I saw some of the 4-star fences, obviously.
Yep.
But I'm obviously predominantly here for the Bromont Rising
Yeah.
Star under 25, sponsored by Mars, and so the main class for these riders is the 2-star. This year, like we had 3 and 4-star riders in the program in past years,
Yep.
but this year they're all in the 2-star.
Yep.
But it was really nice. There were 2 riders, Evie and Erin, that came that were in the program last year.
Oh, wonderful.
So they contacted me and said, would I mind walking the 3-star with them? And we did that last night. So that was good because it gave me a good opportunity to look at the 3-star as well.
Yeah. It's such an incredible program. We were talking about it yesterday. One, it not only gives these young riders sort of a chance to meet each other and make sort of connections there, but for them to be able to call you because you did the program with them last year and to say, can you do this with me? It just opens doors for these young riders,
Totally.
which is amazing.
100%. And there was one rider in the program last year, Julie, and she contacted me and said, she would like to spend a short time over the winter in Europe. So I placed her with the German event rider. So she spent 3 months or 4 months there, both really enjoyed working together. And I think that is sort of the other thing. If one of these riders says, I'm really keen, I really want to become a professional, where could I go to just get a different view on things? It's always easy to place them with someone in Europe if they want to do that over the winter months, and that's where those connections are then really valuable.
It makes such a big difference, and it's amazing that these young riders are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and they should really. Like, I try and encourage them to really do that, because you don't want to see just your own little bubble, as big as the bubble in America is in comparison
Still
to
very small.
Germany, for example. But it's always good to get some different input.
Here we have Jules Ennis Batters and Cooley O. This horse is an Irish sport horse gelding.
As most of the Cooley horses are.
They are, and he's a 17-year-old. So
17.
This pair has been together for quite some time. Jules is based on the eastern shore of Maryland.
It started a little bit out of rhythm into the rein-back, and then it got better. The first shoulder in, to be critical, you would say the horse needs to be a little bit more in balance, a little bit better use of the diagonal aids to get the horse to sit and not just flex. Because that's what the judges want to see, and they can see that quite well when you ride away from them, whether the horse is actually carrying the weight on that inside hind leg, and whether, as we said before, whether it's actually a shoulder in or more of a leg yield.
Right.
And that is just the difference. It's the flexion, the bend, but it's also the sitting and the balance. Because in training, obviously, we use the shoulder in a lot to improve collection, but you can only improve collection if you ride it correctly. But then, as always, you have to know how. I mean, if no one explains to you how to ride it correctly, how would you know?
I always think that's an interesting thing too, is that, you might explain something one way, but it may not sink into me, but having the sort of the tools to say it different ways, I think
for
is
sure
so
that
important.
makes a very big difference. Because what else would you do? You go for what you think the picture should look like.
Yes.
But the most difficult thing is, whoops, it's also a little bit muddled up, that change. But then to have an understanding why you do what you do and what you should be feeling underneath you. And that is the difficult part in our sport. Well, how do you explain feel? Mm-hmm. I mean, I was very, very lucky that my dad, although he looked quite unconventional in the saddle, and he was more a show jumper than anything else, but whenever I couldn't do it, that was a good change, he would just say, come here. And then he got on, he softened the horse, he put me back on, and I could feel the difference. Now, if you don't know what good feels like,
Yes.
it's same thing. How would you know?
It's impossible.
And if it's normal for you to try and hold 40 kilos in the trot and the canter, then 35 is brilliant.
Feels much better.
Feels much better, exactly. So that's how I learned, and I count myself incredibly lucky that I had my dad as my most important trainer to learn all of that, and with all sorts of different horses.
I was very lucky in the similar way that my mom and my dad would also do the same thing, and I would also be able to ride some of my dad's top level horses.
Yeah.
And so he would say, go have a lesson on this one, and just the difference. He's like, that's what it's meant to feel like.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do with your little horse.
Yeah.
And it does make a huge
Makes
difference.
a massive difference, absolutely. Like, that is a game changer. That's why when I coach, I like to ride the horses, because sometimes something when I get on them actually feels different to what it
you
looks
see.
like. And then you have to say, I take my hand up. It's actually not that easy as I thought. You might have to try A, B, C, and D a little different. But yeah, not every trainer likes it, and not everyone wants it either. Not everyone wants someone else to sit on the horse, which is fair enough as well. So
Yeah.
I do get that. I mean, as I said, my dad was amazing, and he would send me off to other trainers. And then I remember having heated discussions because obviously, I was 16, 17, 18, and obviously came back home, and obviously I knew it all better then.
All the
of
things.
course,
You knew
of
everything.
course. But it was that exchange, and he would just laugh it off and said, "Okay, you can show me tomorrow."
And then you get to tomorrow and you're like,
Yeah, very quickly I got put in place. Not quite as I thought it would work.
it's amazing. Yeah.
But that's the good thing about the sport. I mean, there is just, no sport, I find personally, where you have better levelers than this. Like, you can win a 5-star and then you come home and you sit on your novice horse and it dumps you.
Yeah.
I think, don't you know that I won a 5-star yesterday? No.
Don't you know what I've done?
Don't you know what I've done? Exactly.
I mean,
So
horses
they-
really are the
yeah.
great levelers.
Yeah.
There is
And
no
I think
doubt.
that's really what makes us appreciate the good days and everyone else understanding when you have a bad day. Mm-hmm. Because winning and losing is very close
It's
together.
a fine line in this sport.
Yeah.
And I think, too, it shows that, the people who stick with the sport and are in it, it shows the love for the sport and the love for the horses. Because, as you say, it is a humbling sport. It is a hard sport. And at the end of the day, if we didn't love it, we wouldn't still
We
be
wouldn't
in
do
it.
it. Exactly. But it's not that we become millionaires
Exactly.
with it. I mean, the other two disciplines are probably a little bit more fortunate
Yes.
than we are. I do feel we do it for the love of the sport, because we love our horses. We want to train them correctly and good, so that, both enjoy the game out there, what we're going to do tomorrow.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think that our sport is so unique in the fact that the horses come in here and they're supple and hopefully supple and sort of, put together this lovely test. They're like lions on cross country and brave, and, it's a big ask. And then to come in and be careful on Sunday, I just think that what horses do for us are it's so incredibly special.
For sure.
And I think that's why we're all sort of addicted to it, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely an adrenaline rush as well, for sure.
Here we have Emily Ballard and Sexy Swing and Walk. This is another thoroughbred. This is a 13-year-old thoroughbred mare.
Can't wait for the walk now. It says sexy
Swing
swinging.
and Walk. Hopefully it lives up to the name.
Yeah. Certainly, again, it's a very nice hold. It's a very lovely type of a thoroughbred. It's a shame, it was such a lovely entry, and then coming out of that hold was just a little bit too much resistance. And there as well, there's not quite enough flexion. It's a little bit of an angle. Just a little bit of resistance. And this is actually a leg yield and not quite enough flexion for a half pass. She's obviously a little bit unsure about the contact.
This is this pair's first 4-star short.
Yeah, and it's a big thing, as I said before, like going from the 3-star to the 4-star, it's a big difference, and the horse is definitely doesn't like to be told, which then makes, those movements at this level quite difficult, because they, have to accept the contact. They have to be told when to start and to finish a movement. But Emily is trying to stay, really diplomatic and gentle in her contact, and not putting too much pressure on. She really tries hard to keep her horse comfortable and confident. I'm sure it's a cross-country machine.
I would guess
tomorrow, yeah, because she wouldn't be competing at this level without having had good enough results at the level below, and that's really important. I mean, that was one thing that Derek said this morning as well, that he always feels that horse and rider combinations need to do enough 3-star longs,
Yes.
before they try and do a 4-star. And spending time at that level is better than rushing up the grades.
There's no doubt. I think this is definitely one of those sports where patience will pay
For
off
sure.
tenfold.
There's a late change. Obviously the judges have rung the bell. So it'll be interesting to see why. Who have we sitting at C? Who is the judge at C?
The judge at C is Peter.
Peter. So unfortunately we haven't got a microphone.
How hard is that as a rider? Is your sort of to break up that flow? How much do you get in your head? I mean, I would imagine a lot. I know I would get in my head.
Well, it depends a bit. Sometimes, like in a situation like this, where the horse was a little bit, obviously. Okay. Now she's going back where she did the flying change. Well, I'm sure we'll find out why he tooted the horn. But sometimes it can also be an advantage to actually walk for 10 seconds and taking a breath and saying, okay.
Okay, back to it now.
Yeah, back to it now. So it can work both ways.
It's interesting. We have a score in for Kimmy and OS Hermitage, and they will go forward to tomorrow in a 32.9, so 1 point behind Jess.
Okay, interesting.
Tracy and Venezuelan River will move forward tomorrow on a 36.4, and Ashley and Quicksilver Gräns will go forward on a 41.8.
Yeah, I think you can really see that, both of them are actually at the moment still struggling a fair bit at this level, where you would say what is actually required in throughness and suppleness. At least today, because obviously that's all we can say, at least today, that is not quite there. Because from a, basic paces, you would say the horse certainly has got the ability to produce a much better test.
I think just looking back at their record, I don't think this is their favorite phase, but again, this is always, the step up to 4-star is a whole different game.
It is totally different ball game. Like we're pushing at the moment, actually with, within the committee, but also from the federations in Europe. They have under 25 European championships in dressage and show jumping. And we will get that in eventing as well. And David O'Connor, obviously being on the chair on the FEI committee, suggested quite rightly that we should open it up and have like what we used to have, an open European Championship, so that you have other nations that are able to participate as well if they are prepared to send a team over. And I think that is would be a very good opportunity to bridge the gap, because that gap or that step is enormous.
Makes
from
a huge difference
to 4-star. And they used to have this class, obviously at Bremen, which is running this weekend as well, the big competition in Bremen in the UK, in Yorkshire. They used to run the under 25 in a 4-star long. And this year they made it a 4-star short as well, which I guess is already a little bit in preparation to that proposed European Championship, because we felt from a 3-star long, certainly a 3-star long here at Bromont,
Yes.
to go from a cross-country point of
Yes.
view, to go to a 4-star short, the horses should be able to do that.
Yes.
I mean, then dressage and show jumping again is a different ball game. So it will be. I'm hoping that we get that up and running by next year, because I think it's also good for that age group to gain team experience, which we are very lucky in Europe. We have already pony Europeans, we have junior young rider Europeans. So by the time, like someone like Laura Collett,
Yes.
she's been in every team, ponies, juniors,
And
young
you
riders,
just learn a
and
different type
100%.
of pressure.
And that is a little bit the shame, like here, that you don't have that. You don't.
We have our young rider
Yeah.
championships, but it's not the same type of pressure as what you all have in Europe with
Yeah.
the ponies and,
Yeah.
and sort of under 21s and everything like that. I think it would be an amazing step forward, especially if it was opened up, because we've got some super riders here
in that age group.
in that age
Yeah,
group
for sure.
that, you know, in order to get team experience, their first sort of chance is really like a Nations Cup team, but that's a huge step from the 3-star to that level. And
Oh,
so
that is massive.
It's a
For
massive
sure.
step
Yeah.
up, and it's a different kind of pressure. So I think that's a wonderful idea, and I really hope it comes to fruition,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think
Well,
it would
we
help
are
develop.
definitely pushing for it, and you know, it's not applicable, I think, for the other two disciplines, but I think especially in our discipline, and why shouldn't we do things different to dressage and show
Exactly.
jumping?
We're already different enough.
For sure.
Next,
So-
we will welcome in Lauren Nicholson and Landmarks Jungles Gold. This is a Holsteiner Irish sport horse gelding who's just 10 years old.
The CCI 4-star long division.
Oh, it's Diarado. I was just
Yes.
looking. Yeah.
Finish and the 3-star short.
Well, Diarado is obviously now a very famous, not only for show jumping line. Diarado is by Diamant de Semilly, but there are quite a few very nice Diarados now in our sport as well. And Lauren is leading in the 4-star long.
She is, yes.
So fingers crossed that she gets a good test out on this lovely horse as well. She certainly knows how to do it, and obviously very well trained by David O'Connor, who's been her mentor, as I believe, for quite some years.
Yes. I think since she was a teenager.
Yeah, so she would be very well trained. Yeah, that's a nice shoulder, and you would like to see, to be super critical from behind, like to see a little bit more flexion. But the rhythm is nice, and the half pass is definitely nice. It's nicely uphill. The neck is up and out. Now that was not diagonal, unfortunately. So it'd be interesting to see how it marks.
That's where having
But
judges in 3 places comes in as well, right? They'll be able to see.
They should all see that, whether it's diagonal or not. They should all see it, but not everyone does, unfortunately. But the shoulder and half pass is now very nice. And it's sometimes difficult for the horses. Like, I find it depends a little bit how they build. And they do struggle a little bit in learning to find that right balance in the rein back to keep it diagonal. But a nice smooth transition to the walk. And that horse certainly has got a really nice walk. Now that is what you want to see. Now the horse is stretching over the back, lovely over tracking, very happy. Like she should score really well for that walk, because that is a supple, confident, happy horse, and that's what they would be looking for. And again, nice transition to the medium walk. And just a couple of collected steps. That's how it should be done. And there was a good change. Struggled a little bit to stay on the line afterwards. But I think from our... Oops. There was a bit variation in angle. So a slight little disturbance. But was very well corrected by Lauren. Nice extended canter. Again, it was uphill. The horse reached a bit with the nose. Oops.
Oh.
There was a trainer in Lauren saying, no, we're not turning round. And I can see her point. I probably would have done exactly the same. She wanted to make her point because he did exactly the same with that first change. He changed and then run a little bit sideways. Unfortunately, you don't get that rewarded in the test, which is a real shame.
But it will set her up for success.
It will set
the
her
next
up
time.
for sure. The horse will know now. I have to stay straight a little bit longer. And she did it very well because she actually waited for that extra stride for the change to give him the best chance of producing a straight flying change. And he just said, I know what's coming, just let me do it. She will be disappointed, but I think she shouldn't be because overall it was actually a nice test. How old is the horse?
He's just 10.
Oh, just 10, so there's everything to go for.
Yes, and we've been saying this all along as well, but this is not a dressage competition
Oh, for
here
sure
at
not.
Bromont.
No, definitely not a dressage test.
There's a lot to do out there tomorrow.
Yes. But it's always good if you feel that you have a little bit in hand.
Yes, it's
and
nice
that you've done everything you can between those white boards.
Makes every second count tomorrow.
Yes, it definitely does.
How are all the kids feeling about the courses out there?
They seem to be quite confident, even the first timers. They seem to be quite happy with it. And you have, what you said earlier, there are all sorts of horses. There's one horse which I absolutely love. It's from Mary Cotton, I think.
Yes.
And she works for Boyd Martin. And that horse is just the funniest horse. It's 17 years of age. It's a Percheron cross thoroughbred. Looks more like a Percheron than a thoroughbred. And it's been a riding school horse for most of his life. And now it's with Mary. And it was so funny on Wednesday. We were 20 minutes into our session. And I could see on the look of his face that he just thought, I've been a riding school horse all my life. Had to struggle with all these amateurs wanting to learn how to ride. And now I have to do this.
What am I doing
within
here?
The white boards. And he just walked out. He literally walked out over the boards. I had to laugh so much. I just thought, this is so sweet. What a smart horse. And Boyd said it's actually a really confident and clean jumper. It won't be the fastest tomorrow. And Mary knows, not to push it. But she will have a great ride tomorrow. She will enjoy it and she will have a fun time out there because the horse is very smart. And if it gets, you're asking how do they feel. I'm sure if the horse feels at any stage, this is in the too hard basket, he will just say,
no, thank you.
Next time, another time. And there is always another day.
There's always another day.
That is something that, I try and give my students, as upsetting as it is, especially if you've traveled a long way, there is always another day.
And you would rather wait another day than wish you hadn't.
Definitely.
I love hearing that about that horse because I walked into the tent after his test the other day and there were about 5 women, my mom included, who were all saying, we want that one to be our next fox hunter. And so
it was the facial expression. It's like, oh no. Really? Seriously?
So
do I have to
funny.
do this now? It was very sweet.
That's very funny. And, you know, I have a Percheron Cross, and he is the smartest horse I've ever had
Oh,
in
I
my
can,
entire
yeah.
life. And I can sort of imagine that expression of like,
Yeah.
what have I done to be here? But I think I'm finished for the moment.
I've given you everything with all these beginners.
But I bet tomorrow his ears will be pricked when he leaves the start
Oh,
box.
he had
and-
his ears pricked
yeah.
in there as well. He just had a different idea of how to finish the day. Which, fair enough. So we changed it a little bit around and then we finished on a good note.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No, he certainly had a happy face all the way through. He just wanted that day to go a little differently.
A little different.
That's very funny.
Next we have Haley Freelick and Dundan Black Watch. This is the 15-year-old Australian thoroughbred.
And Haley is from New Zealand, I see.
Yes.
So she's been based over in America.
Yeah, she's been based in Pennsylvania for quite some time now.
That I find is a smart move, like riding around the arena. I always like to do, if the horse is a bit nervous, you've got a couple of things that you can do outside the arena. Shoulder in is one. It's a good one because it puts you in the position of putting your leg on, but not getting faster. The other one that you can do is go rising trot. And if your horse is very confident with the atmosphere and everything, I always like to show off outside the arena what my horse does best.
Yeah.
Whether it's like an extended canter or with Ringwood Cockatoo, I used to go medium trot around, just smile and say, look how good he can trot. But that obviously you can only do if the horse feels really confident. What is their average score, usually?
They are usually... I'll get it 1 second.
Just a few, although it was straight, but just too many trot steps coming into the hold.
Usually around a 35.7 is
Okay.
sort of their average.
Mm-hmm.
for
How
the
old is
last
the
12
horse?
months. He's 15.
15. So you should really know his game.
Yeah, I think he had a bit of time off, and so I think that sort of is coming back up.
Has the horse done a 5-star?
Just pulling that.
Sorry.
No, I
asking all
love
these
it. You're asking all the
questions.
questions I just had in my
Yeah,
head
because
as
it's,
well.
I find that interesting because then you do know a little bit about the history of that horse. Nice hold. And diagonal rein back. Well done. Brrrt. Yeah, they again coming out of a rein back or coming from the hold. Sometimes you have to give them 1 or 2 steps to actually find that new balance. And it's a thoroughbred, so they haven't invented the dressage, although there are enough very nice thoroughbreds out that can move very well and could easily be dressage
Yes.
horses. But it's a different ball game for them, and it's not what they were meant and bred to do. So you have to give them a chance to understand all the aids and especially that change of balance from one pace or one movement to the other.
Yeah, the horse has been a 5-star. I know that he had a bit of time off, and Haley took him to the 4-star at Kentucky this spring
right.
and ran into a few issues, and so I think this is their sort of reroute from there. But again, I think she was happy to have him back out because I think
Yeah, there's a difficult one. He's just not, although he walks nice enough, he's just not quite concentrating, not quite relaxed enough. What we said about Lauren's horse, not quite soft enough over the back. So the judges will obviously, when they score, keep that in mind. But a very nice strike-off. Like that was probably one of the best strike-offs from that collected walk into canter. And a super change. Good half pass. Again, as a coach, you would probably say try and balance that outside shoulder a little bit more. Good extension. yeah, the canter work is definitely the highlight, I would say, so far in
lovely.
this test. And really starting with that strike off. Looked a bit like an accident, but it was a clean change. Like I always think, the judges like to see that you prepare a movement, and they like to see the process to go, you know, for a really high score. Which that, as I said, that although it was a clean change, but it looked a bit over and get on with it. But the main thing, it was a clean change.
Yes.
She certainly looks very pleased. And as I say, probably happy to have him at this level again, which is very nice.
Well, that wraps up our 4-star division here, our 4-star short division here at Mars Bromont. Bettina, thank you for sitting in with me. It has
My
been
pleasure.
wonderful and so insightful, and I think everyone will have learned a lot, including myself. And I
Thank you very much.
really appreciate your time. And I know that, again, the Bromont Rising program is so important, and we're so grateful that you're here to help guide these kids. And it's so nice that they can reach out to you after, as they've clearly done this year, which we love to hear. So thank you for joining us. We will be cheering on all of the under 25s tomorrow as everyone sets out to tackle Derek's cross-country course.
Yeah, I think it will be an exciting day, and I hope that everyone is tuning in and
Yeah, I
watching
hope
the cross-country live
everyone,
tomorrow.
yeah, everyone tune in, please. We will be on Bromont's YouTube page. You can also catch the action on Clip My Horse. We will be coming out this evening with a bit of a course preview. We had some of the top riders
wow.
walk different combinations on
Fantastic.
Derek's course, and I also got to have a little chat with the man himself to hear some thoughts on why Derek loves Bromont and why it's such an important place to produce horses. So please tune in, and we hope that we will see you bright and early. But signing off for now from Mars Bromont, this is Annie Bishop and Bettina Hoy. Thank you.
Have a good evening, rest of the day, night, whatever, wherever in the world you are.
Gravity Defier for life. IMS for life. Different dogs have different needs, like skin and coat, mobility support, and healthy digestion. That's why IMS Advanced Health has different formulas, so every dog can be a healthy dog.